Regional Workbench Consortium is, bottom line, a group of people working together, a group of partners, principally in the San Diego-Tijuana region. It is essentially a network that is university-based, but we're linked with a whole gamut of partners that change depending on the project that we're doing. But this includes industry partners, community-based partners, as well as nonprofits.
We started to think about how to develop a collection of tools that will support sustainable development in the area. So one of the original ideas was to create a website where we will house tools that communities can use in order to analyze sustainability, analyze quality of life problems and issues.
The workbench term implies building of a portal that enables one to get access to lots of different kinds of information without having to understand how that information is necessarily kept or stored in these other places.
And eventually it became clear that a website by itself doesn't do much good. There should be some human capital behind this website. Organization, infrastructure, a set of stakeholders that will all consider that this website is something useful and will go to this website, use these tools, provide data for this collaborative organization.
We have the San Diego Association of Governments, which is probably one of the world's best public sector agencies that are maintaining what you could call a regional information system. Yet their ability to sort of draw science into that has not been as robust as they would like. So the university, of course, is a treasure trove of science, and we offered to host a meeting of the Regional Planning Committee at UCSD to share the tools that we're developing and to share this mission of working together with these public sector agencies to better link science and technology to policy and planning. We thought we'd do is start off by just showing you this planning and decision support tool, solid terrain model, and this is a project of the Regional Workbench Consortium. It took a team effort, and a lot of the people around here in the room today made this possible. I'd like to introduce Lawrence Faulkner, who's the president of Solid Terrain Modeling.
My company has invented a new process whereby we can take existing geographic data and render it in a physical three-dimensional format. This is a model of about 2 degrees of the Earth. It runs from the Pacific Ocean on this side over to the Gulf of California, where the Colorado River empties into the Gulf of California. So this is a cross-border region where we take in the southern part of California here and the northern part of Baja California in Mexico. Over here you see the bumps, and this represents the surface of the seafloor just off the coast. This is San Diego. In this greater San Diego area here, and the national city down here next to the border, and this is Tijuana, and the border is apparent right along this area here just because of the way the development has worked on either side of the border. The Tijuana River actually drains this whole plateau up here.
Now that I've been studying this area a lot, it strikes me, you know, how the peninsula is tilted like this way. Very strong slopes down here. It goes all the way down here. So all this greenness is mainly the influence of the Pacific Ocean. And to see, you can see this is a desert and this is a mountain range. And if you see a flat map, maybe you won't be able to perceive it that way.
Right, you still see the different colors, but why they might be that color is no longer obvious to you. When you look at it this way, it looks natural that, okay, the lowlands are probably going to be hot, the highlands maybe are getting some of the benefit of the ocean air, and they're going to drop their water, it'll drop before it makes it down. And so some of these relationships that are subtle and difficult to explain, if you don't have the piece in front of you, become intuitive when you do have the piece in front of you.
Our contribution is the bathymetric data here. Over the years, we have used sonar mapping on ships to go out and to measure the ocean floor. And what happens is we get a lot of track lines, very sparse data, And we have to take all the combined data over many years and combine it to produce a grid of the ocean floor.
The effort of being here at this fellowship program that moved me to merge both data from the US and Mexico. They have different standards and references to go to feet, to state-paid coordinates, to another projection, from fathoms in bathymetry here to meters here. So it was really a merging effort to match the edges between
Decision makers find these much easier to relate to in terms of understanding geography and the impact of geography on planning and any sort of projects that they may be working on.
You can see things that maybe aren't as obvious. You see things quicker. You start to see why a lot of people live on the coast and maybe not further into the east, because you see how mountainous most of San Diego County is. I mean, you can see right off the bat where our centers of population are and why they're there, and perhaps why just looking at a flat map without any of this stuff on it would give you a misconception of what your urban planning and all of your regional planning can do that maybe isn't practical at all. I'm an architect by profession, so looking at plans comes a little easier for me, but I've noticed that frequently I've been in meetings with elected officials and they're not maybe getting an intuitive understanding of what two-dimensional maps and documents are trying to convey, and sometimes are led into major policy blunders. This gives you, it's an improvement, there's no question about it.
After the meeting, we went into the Scripps Institution of Oceanography Visualization Center. We organized a series of kind of demos. The only way that something like this can work effectively is if you're leveraging existing efforts and trying to find a way of providing synergy across these efforts. Jeff Sale is doing phenomenal work at San Diego State University in their Computational Science and Education Center.
This is the web page that users will use to get access to the first 7 modules of the 3D Regional Canvas of the Californias. Our first module is the entire overview of the 3D Regional Canvas, including Southern California and the San Diego region, as well as Northern Baja and the Tijuana region. So for example, we can fly into the area around Ensenada. You can see the islands off the coast of Ensenada. Another important component of this data set is the fact that we have bathymetry data off the coast of California. The data that I'm using for this web-based visualization is the same data that's used by, for example, the Scripps Visualization Center researchers, including geophysicists and oceanographers. It's a data set that was compiled by Alejandro Hinojosa at Cesese, south of the border in Baja, Mexico. And what's exceptional about this data set is it is the same data set as the high resolution versions. We've reduced the resolution not only of the aerial image, but also of the terrain model. And it has the highest quality data of information south of the international border of any data set that I think anyone can get at over the web. The blue spheres provide a navigational interface that's still just exploratory. So for example, if we want to go to the San Diego River watershed, we can bring up a layer that represents just the watershed regions. And you can see these blue spheres correspond to 3 different watersheds. So we'll go ahead and shift-click. Well, let's go to the Otay Reservoir. I'm kind of fond of the Otay River watershed region. It has a lot of high detail. If we establish a view from the east and zoom up here, we can fly in and really get some nice detail on some of the development that's being done in the watershed area. This is the Olympic Training Center, but there's new communities being developed all around the watershed that are having very significant impact in terms of water quality and non-point source pollution. Now we also have a 27-year history use morph of the Southern California, San Diego area. Now this was Landsat data that was acquired back in 1976, 1989, and 1999. And the information is in infrared format. That's why you'll see red where vegetation exists, and suburban areas are more gray, more typically gray. So we'll zoom in here and get a closer look at some of the detailed areas where considerable development has taken place over the past 30 years. We're looking at 1976 right now. In 1989, we see considerable reduction in vegetation, and the Tijuana area around here has expanded quite a bit. We see development continuing in the East Lake area of Bonita, and we jump to 1999, and it's even more so. Tijuana has now become a sprawling urban metropolis. The vegetation is significantly reduced. We see bright spots representing parks and golf courses, but that's about all that's left in the urban areas. The Regional Workbench Consortium is still in the process of defining itself. We are very excited about the direction we're heading in right now with providing more accessible tools to both the general public and regional planning decision makers. I don't want users to simply be wowed by the novelty of the three-dimensionality. We want to make sure that these tools are actually making a valuable contribution to decision making.
If we come here and we see the tools that help us understand the decisions that we make and how they really change our neighborhoods and how we feel about what's happening in San Diego County, we can make better decisions.
I have been a long time advocate that the universities have a great deal of information, that they should participate very, very significantly in the community and in community decisions. As a matter of fact, I believe, and I was for years a politician, that politicians should have the advantage of some of the information that universities have in decision making.
The technology stuff that's happening here at the consortium is a great opportunity for us planners at SANDAG to partner, and very often planners tend to look in numbers, and yet the policymakers are making these decisions. As they say, a picture's worth a million words, right? And so when that policymaker can take some of these plans that very often, I'm trying to get the SANDAG guys to get the reports smaller and the pictures better, and this is a great way to do that.
I'm really a big proponent of planning based on your ecosystem, and watershed quality is so critical. So what's nice is you can actually see the watersheds, you can see the roads, you can see where proposed developments or projects are going, and kind of look and see really what the real impact of that is, downstream, upstream, to the side. So I mean, that just blew me away. And looking at the ocean and the terrain of the ocean floor, the possibilities are mind-boggling.
Partnership with Telesis goes back to the very beginning. Telesis is developing what I consider the region's premier quality of life data warehouse. They principally focus on health and human services, but the technology behind it, the online interactive mapping behind that, is something that we're able to use as well. There's a good example where by leveraging existing efforts we can get sort of bigger bang for our buck, because the San Diego Baykeeper, one of their fortes is to enable citizen participation in monitoring of environmental conditions, in particular water quality issues.
What we've done is developed an online interactive website that ties in water monitoring locations throughout San Diego and northern Baja, along with other fundamental geographic data, to give users in the community a sense of water quality in their region. I am zooming in on the city of San Diego and the city of Tijuana. And if you see these yellow triangles, those represent water monitoring locations along streamside and oceanside areas. So the user can basically drill in and start looking at those areas. So I'm going to zoom in on the city of Tijuana now. And we're looking at here, these different colors represent different hydrological watersheds throughout the city of Tijuana. And when you have those overlaid with these GPS locations, a user can basically click on those and pull up a profile and see information that regards that particular water monitoring and the quality and everything. So what we've done here is at the very bottom of the screen, I've pulled up a profile of that water monitoring location. So it says PT20, that's the name of that water monitoring site, Playa Cañada Azteca, and then it's located within the Tijuana River watershed. There are the latitude, longitude, the geographical location of that site, and basically it's just another profile. It talks about the parameters, total coliform, E. coli, and it talks about the frequency of when it's monitored bi-weekly. So it's basically an entire profile of what happens geographically at that location.
This is a 3D model of Landsat 7 imagery draped over topography that the 3D Viz group has put together for the Regional Workbench Consortium. So right here we have a Landsat 7 image processed to 30 meters, draped over topography, and you can see in this example San Diego, of course, with Coronado and Point Loma, and Ensenada down here in the south. The Salton Sea over to the east, and then as I spin it around, you can kind of get a nature of how dramatic the relief is around San Diego. Looking at how a watershed is viewed in 3D and how water moves over that watershed is very important in just understanding the dynamics of the system.
Presenting information by watersheds is a new way of looking at regional data. Watersheds represent natural areas by which we can look at pollution, by which we can look at even at human activity. And of course, it is not that easy to convert census data, because census data come by census tracts or census block groups or something like that. It's not that easy to convert this by watersheds, but it immediately brings some new insights as to how natural and social phenomena interact.
One of the more interesting sort of trajectories of innovation in the Workbench, and one of the sets of tools being developed by Richard Marciano, is the intent to architect a series of chronologies that will provide the viewer, be it a researcher, a policymaker, access to, let's call it, the official planning history, the official regional chronologies, side by side with, let's call it, the unofficial regional histories.
We chose one plan in this demonstration, which is the 1926 Nolan Plan, as an illustration of the kinds of capabilities and services we could provide through the Regional Workbench Consortium interfaces. So if we were to look at one of these interfaces, here you see a bird's eye view of the entire city plan, all 30-some pages. We're looking at a close-up shot of the General Park System Plan, 1926 Nolan update. And what you're seeing here are all these green corridors, these linkage corridors from parks to waterfront areas. In this particular case, you see green linkages from the south of Balboa Park to the Civic Center all the way to the bay. And it's not just one, you have multiple corridors. What's very interesting is that this whole area right now, so-called the Embarcadero area, is being considered for future development. And in some sense, we are almost reconnecting, almost 80 years later, with this initial vision of a park system and a waterfront system to provide services for citizens of San Diego. The second layer is what we're calling the invisible plans. And we have one illustration of this, which is the 1936 redlining plans. This was a federal plan that was implemented in over 200 cities all over the United States. And what we're looking at here through this color map is the particular San Diego rendition of this plan. Redlining is a process of divvying up neighborhoods, literally coloring them according to a green, blue, yellow, red scale, which reflects their desirability in terms of house value and also in terms of race purity. And there are many theories at the time on the importance of preserving homogeneous neighborhoods to boost house values. And that's really what the redlining plan is all about. In 1936, San Diego was divided into 4-tier areas, green being the best area, the green grasses or the elite areas of San Diego, red being the not so desirable areas. Those were areas where economic disinvestment was encouraged, where mortgage loans, fire insurance, property insurance was very difficult to get or nearly impossible. And this was done by design as part of what we're calling this hidden plan. The reason we call it hidden is that this was not shared with the public and was really declassified some 40 plus years later. So we're now finally making all this information available to the public and to citizens of San Diego such that they can get a glimpse of the prescribed future of San Diego as devised and thought out in the 30s. If you were to take a more detailed look at these maps, you'll see that all the outlying areas, Mission Hills, Kensington, which were really considered suburbs in the 1930s, were those areas that were already receiving the higher rankings and green and blue ratings.
The conclusion is that the policies established 70 years ago, although they are no longer implemented formally, have resulted in housing patterns that have continued to the present. This map shows relative housing values in the 2000 census. Tract 1 shows bright green, which means that the median value in that tract is higher than in 99% of the other tracts in San Diego County. Tract 48 shows red, which means that the median value of housing in that tract is higher than only 5% of the other 600 tracts in San Diego County. Tract 1 is in Mission Hills, Tract 48 is in Logan Heights. This map shows the relative distribution of white population. In this case, Mission Hills, Tract 1, shows up green, higher than 99% of the other census tracts in San Diego County, with a white population of 91%. Also, Logan Heights, Tract 48, shows up red, with only 3% white population, lower than 95% of the other census tracts in San Diego County. Again, the racial patterns continue that were in effect in the 1930s.
Visionary documents were, we've put on this timeline this famous document called Temporary Paradise, which was an integrated and holistic look at the landscape of the San Diego region, including cross-border areas. And this was truly a visionary plan and continues to fuel the imagination of many citizens and planners throughout the region. We're really viewing this as a starting point and an invitation for people to contribute their own visionary experiences and histories of the San Diego area.
One of the ways that we're trying to represent our projects and inspire people to continually improve knowledge in a certain project domain is through online interactive narratives. The interactive narratives are really just about 3 minutes long, and what they are is a window onto a database that's back there somewhere, but this window is a story.
Here in the San Diego-Tijuana cross-border city region, a binational team of university, government, industry, and community-based partners have come together to foster sustainable development. One of our pilot projects aims to improve the infrastructure in fast-growing, low-income communities located at the urban periphery of Tijuana, Mexico.
The pilot project is in a neighborhood called the Colonia Diaz de Mayo, or 10th of May community. It is located near the U.S.-Mexico border. Most of the workers living in the Colonia Diaz de Mayo are employed in nearby Mexican factories, also known as maquiladores. Like many new low-income settlements in Tijuana's rapidly expanding industrial zones, the Colonia Diaz de Mayo lacks basic urban services and infrastructure.
Since 1999, the Diaz de Mayo Binational Work Group has held many meetings on both sides of the border to develop a strategic plan. Community members have played an important role in shaping this plan through several on-site participatory design workshops. Residents of the community have determined that the creation of a local park is a high priority and a good starting point for upgrading their neighborhood. Not only will it provide a much-needed multi-use green space, it will also serve as a rallying point for community identity and pride.
We did this project, but it's all in English, other than the overarching sort of script, the opening 3-minute script. But there's a lot of sections where if somebody's viewing this story and wants to learn more about the women organizers or the local factories called maquiladoras, they click on that and they can get more information. It's the context. So we have students from the Proy School who are translating these pieces for us and playing a very useful role.
Fue pasado.
Tijuana agregó un promedio de 6 maquiladoras y 1,712 trabajadores cada mes.
Perhaps one of the more powerful things about the Regional Workbench Consortium is the technological prowess of it all, and the science and the building of these tools. But we don't want to get lost in that. That's not what it's all about. Making the world a better place is going to depend maybe 10% on the tools and technology. What's really going to have to come into play here is building the right ecology of agents, or the right group of people that are concerned and engaged and that are willing to do, let's say, the right thing by connecting their work in meaningful ways, in an engaged way with partners in the region. And I think there's a window of opportunity here where it's, you know, we can be optimists still. And I think working at the regional level is the right way to think about this. The region is where the local and the global come together. And the ethic of sustainability, paying attention to social justice and equity, we've got to start doing this, and in part, not just for our own generation. But here's where this Kenyan proverb, I think, a nice Kenyan proverb comes into play that undergirds the sustainability discourse. And that's that we don't inherit the earth from our parents, we borrow it from our children. And so it's somewhat of a moral obligation to think through how to harness these amazing tools, this incredible technological prowess of ours, in the nitty-gritty, getting out there, working with people, and resolving some of these problems, because we've got to do it differently.